Be good to introduce ourselves, and then I'll make an opening comment, but let's do introductions first.
I'm Pam Wordler. I'm in the Department of Music. I'm chair of the music department, and that's in the College of Humanities and Fine Arts.
And I'm Renee Duncan. I'm the Associate Provost for Undergraduate Education, but I was department chair for psychology for 10 years before moving into the provost office, and then of course a faculty member in that department for many years as well.
My name is David Durr. I'm in the College of Business, specifically in the Finance and Economics department. And I was just going to make a quick comment in that, you know, when you go to the holiday celebrations at someone's house, there's the big table and the small table. I'm sitting at the big table today with deans and chairs and provosts. I'm a college professor in the College of Business, but I've been involved with our promotion committee at both department, collegiate, and now the university level. So I'm happy to be here and glad you're here.
Hi, I'm Steve Cobb. I'm Dean of the Jones College of Science, Engineering, and Technology, and I've served in that position for the last 8 years. Prior to that, I was 14 years as a department chairman in the Department of Engineering and Physics. So it's been a long time since I've been productive. So I'll try and remember back that far.
Back to those days. So the one comment I wanted to make before we open it up to your questions is that it's real important for you to remember that every single college and every department within those colleges have their own requirements and expectations for tenure and promotion. And so the information we're going to give is going to be broad, although we might get specific about what we do in our own departments or areas and what we look for. But it's going to be so very, very important for you to communicate very closely with your department chair and also the senior faculty within your department, because they're the ones who know exactly what those particular departments are looking for. So make sure that you get your advice from the people who are actually writing your evaluations and know those expectations that they have for your performance and your success. So with that said, we want to just open it up to your questions and concerns, and like Elizabeth said, if you need us to have a few starter questions, we can do that ourselves. But any questions?
I got some questions.
Oh, good. So introduce yourselves too.
I am Beth Donovan. I'm in the math department. It's my first year. So in my last school, not my first job, but at my last school, tenure was just kind of like given after 5 years. I was at a community college, so like this is a little bit different. I guess my first question, just from what you were saying, is do typically you know who's writing your recommendation letter? You know, because as I put my APR together and I handed it, I know we get letters, but you typically know? Because you said, you know, communicate, or is that, you know, just kind of like on the fly, somebody decides to write your letter for that year?
So I'm glad you asked that question. The way the process works is that each of you will be evaluated every year. So you've probably just now been going through the submitting your information for this year's annual evaluation. So when it comes time for tenure, the senior faculty within your department will take a packet that's kind of like the information that you've submitted this year. They'll take the packet of materials that you've put together to show that you should get tenure, and the senior faculty will review that. Now, really large departments will have probably a subcommittee that does the first round, but generally it's the entire tenured senior faculty within your department that look at that. They will make a determination and a recommendation based on that. They give their determination and recommendation to the chair. The chair then does the same thing, gives a recommendation to the dean, and then the dean well, I guess there's a college committee in there.
Before the dean.
Yeah, before the dean. And so that college committee reviews the packet, the application for tenure, then the dean, then it goes to a university committee. So it's really not a letter, it's a report almost. I know Steve has written across the years many of these recommendations, so I'll let you.
There's a slight difference in what happens now for you during your probationary period and what will happen at the end of your probationary period when you apply for tenure. Right now, I would suspect that most colleges have something similar to what I'll describe. Every year, you'll turn in an annual summary of activities. We base our summary of activities at Murray State on the calendar year, not the academic year. It's a little unusual. So if you're here in your first year, it's only covering one semester, the fall semester. Those are usually due about this time, sometime end of January, 1st of February, by the time you get everything put together. It will go to a departmental committee. That departmental committee, each department has its own way of doing it. It might be as few as 3 people, it might be 7 or 8, or it might be the entire tenured faculty in that department. Your department will have a procedure for that. You should be allowed to ask who is on that committee. And you just ask your chair, who is sitting in review of my materials this time? And they should be able to identify for you who those folks are. They will, as a group, reach a consensus, and they will write, it looks like a letter or a memo. It can sometimes be very brief, it can sometimes be a little longer, and it will describe your progress toward tenure in the areas of teaching, research, and service. Those are the standard kinds of things. Then, as Renee just said, that packet gets sent up to the chair does the same thing, and then it goes to the dean in our college, and the dean meets with the chair and the faculty member every year in a formal sit-down to discuss progress toward tenure. That's our college's procedure annually. Then at the end of your probationary period, which at Murray State the standard is 5 years probationary period with your tenure application being turned in at the beginning of your 6th year, then all of those annual performance reviews that you've gotten, and you should get a copy of those all the way up, and you should save them. What the department said about you, what your chair said about you, what your dean said about you, save those. Those form the backbone of your tenure application. You will have an opportunity when you put in your formal tenure application to talk about your contributions in teaching, research and scholarship, and service, and also a section called Needs of the University. Needs of the University is typically one that's a little bit vague. We just instruct our faculty, tell us, give us your sales pitch. What do you bring to this college or to your department or to this university that they wouldn't have if you weren't here? What special attributes do you have? You might have a particular certification that you know is needed. You might assist them in an accreditation effort that they would be losing if you weren't here. So it gives you a chance to put your best case forward there. That packet then goes to your department, and again, this is where the faculty handbook actually says all tenured members of the department are supposed to weigh in on this. And that's everybody, and everybody's supposed to sign it. So that's the department, the chair, there's a collegiate committee made up of one representative from each department in the college, the dean, the provost, on up to the president, and finally to the Board of Regents. It takes a full year to go through that. And so there's kind of a blend of things that happen there. Each step along the way, you should be informed about what each evaluative agency has recommended, either favorably or unfavorably, on your tenure application. The point that we try and the reason we have the sit-down meeting every year is we don't feel like tenure ought to be a surprise. The tenure decision should not be a surprise to you. If there are mid-course corrections that need to be made, let's make them in the 2nd and 3rd year, so we have time to make some corrections and to change some things. Sometimes it's not an adversarial relationship either. It's a very constructive process where those of us that have navigated the process can give you some hints. Hey, you really ought to play this up. This is important. This is what you really do well. We can say, it looks like your teaching is well respected, and you just got the teaching part down your research and scholarship might be a little light. Let's focus this year on that. Let's get a grant proposal out. Let's try and get a publication out. Let's try and get if it's music performance, let's work on a music performance or an adjudicated showing if you're an artist. You know, it can take on lots of things depending on your discipline. But we try and give advice that way. And it gives you a chance each year to talk with us about, hey, I'm struggling in this area. I really need some help. I'm really having classroom management issues here. Or this class you've assigned me, it's not in my wheelhouse and it's just not working very well for me. Could I look at getting out of that one and going into something else? I would really see that as a benefit. And you need to have that kind of honest, open communication back and forth. And I don't think it should only happen once a year, but once a year is the time when at least we know that it's occurred at least once a year. I hope that you have that level of communication throughout. That's the way our college approaches it. There might be variation.
Yeah, each of the reports usually has some kind of summary statement that says you're making adequate progress towards tenure, or in this area you are not making sufficient progress, but then it gives you helps for this is what we think you need to do, as Steve said, and it's really important to follow that advice as it goes along. Our department does a mid-tenure review. Some departments do, not everybody does, but in the third year you submit a packet that is your first 3 years worth of creative activities and research and service and teaching. So it's a model for your tenure portfolio, but at that time you get some pretty strong wording that if this is not in your portfolio for tenure, you will not receive tenure, if that's the case. It's rarely the case, but it has saved us in some situations where somebody was really lacking in an area and they had not paid attention to the advice that had been given in the previous years. We choose to do that because our faculty feel strongly about that, and it's just what a particular area does. Usually you're going to find the review helpful, and if you have other questions, please ask. Again, ask your chair, ask your colleagues. There is probably an answer to the question that you are asking, even though you may have a totally different teaching responsibility from the person that you are asking. There are some things that are across the board in the department. In our particular department, the requirements for tenure and for promotion have been grouped into Tier 1 activities and Tier 2 activities and Tier 3 activities, and there's actually, you need to have 2 of these and 3 of those, that kind of thing. So there's some very clear part, but we have a threshold, a list of activities that you have to do, or it doesn't matter whether you perform in New York City. If you don't have these 3 things, it doesn't matter. So you need to be sure if there are any of those kinds of foundational requirements that you pay attention to those.
Yeah, I would add that some departments have very clearly stated expectations for, or minimal expectations for tenure. Other departments don't have it in writing. So if you're in a department that doesn't have in writing what those minimal or minimum expectations are, make sure that you frequently ask your chair and your senior faculty, because again, those are the people who are going to be making the decisions, making the recommendation either way. And so as long as you're having those conversations throughout the time you're in your probationary period, you're not going to be surprised at the end. If you are in a department where the expectations are in writing and are very clearly stated, make sure you pay attention to that. If they took the time to figure out what those minimal expectations are and put them in writing, you better meet those. So they wouldn't be suggestions, they would be real honest to goodness requirements. And if they are in writing and you don't quite understand, so let's say you're required to have a minimum of 4 level 1 publications. That's in psychology, there's something along that line. Well, what the heck's a level 1 publication? So make sure that you get those definitions. If your department places strong expectations on outside of the classroom work with students, which, you know, Murray State is a number 1, we're a teaching institution, and so if you're not spending time with students, many of the departments will say, wow, your research is fantastic, but you're not doing anything to mentor your students or to guide their research. So make sure you have those conversations. I think the theme here is to talk to your chairs, talk to the senior faculty so that you don't get those surprises.
And I won't agree with everything. I mean, I do agree with everything that's been said. I want to just comment on a couple. Dr. Cobb said it's not adversarial, and it's not. You got to remember, we're so delighted that you're here. You made the cut. We made you the offer. We were just as thrilled to have you as I hope you were thrilled to join us. Just kind of give you an idea of what takes place in our department. We have a chair of the department tenure committee, and all the members meet, and we have pulled up on the screen your performance for the year. I mean, it'll show what your teaching evaluations were. It might show the grade distributions. We're going to see what publications. And so just as a group in the finance and economics area, that's what we do. We see it up there, and it gives us a good opportunity to talk. And so we're all on the same page then when we write our little blurb on teaching and research and service. You wouldn't believe how we wordsmith this thing. I mean, it's like, well, I like it, but I don't like the word and. It should be, so we wordsmith it to death, but we
So pay attention to how it's written.
That's correct, thank you. And so when we finally agree, and we do write it, it's not vague. I mean, it'll say we're happy with the progress, or you're making adequate progress, or making sufficient progress. However, these are some things that you need to watch. And again, please read those. So.
Yeah, and thinking of reading those, just like when you give students feedback on what they've turned into you, we expect the students to read our feedback and make changes based on that. Having gone through many of these across the years, it is kind of dismaying that sometimes the committee will make some very concrete recommendations for how to improve, and then we don't see that those recommendations have been acted on. It might be that the faculty member did act on them, but we didn't see it. And so, like attending the faculty development workshops, that's fantastic. We want to see that. But the committee may not know unless you tell us. And so Elizabeth lets the chairs know, but maybe the chair forgets to let the committee know. So tell us that. If the committee recommended that you do more service and yet you're still not volunteering to serve on committees, they're going to pay attention to that. So make sure that as you're carefully reading the feedback that has been carefully crafted, make sure that you pay attention to that, and then the next year acknowledge in your the materials that you submit how you addressed each of the concerns that was brought up, and that way you'll make them happy, because we like to be paid attention to, and so if you show that you've paid attention to our feedback, that's a good thing.
I'd like to ask a question to you, if I could. How many of you have set up, let's say, a folder or a box or something, and each time you've done something, attended a seminar, gotten a thank you note, gone to a meeting, and you're dropping it in? Because it's so easy to do that now. It's kind of like doing your taxes. At the end of the year, you're like, what did I spend this on? And you're trying to do your taxes. Same on trying to come up with your annual evaluation. Mm-hmm. And so one of our colleagues in English, Sue Schroeder, is really big on that. She's the one that has said, yeah, you should have something every time. Drop it in. Even if you don't think it's significant, drop it in. You can decide later if it's significant. So how many of you do that? Any of you?
I keep a running calendar, and then I've already put in work my APR during finals week. I'm sitting waiting for them to come out.
And put, now I know this is a psychology department. I don't know if other departments do this, but we are so picky that we want to actually see graded exams and graded assignments. And so have a physical box, or if you do it all online, a physical folder in your computer where you have those graded examples. Having myself, I know that there were years where I had forgotten to do that, and so in February or January, I'm chasing students down who were in my class the last semester saying, please, do you still have a copy of this paper you wrote, don't make that mistake. So having a box or a folder where you can just throw things is a brilliant idea. I'm
Sue's
glad you
idea.
brought that up. Yeah, I'm glad Sue brought that up, so.
There are other things you need to keep too. It would be smart, I think, to keep grade distributions for all your courses and student evaluations on all your courses. Those are kept in other offices as well, but it's a lot easier if you have them and you don't have to go asking at the department level or the collegiate level, or, you know, do you have a copy of this, you know, the grade distributions for 2016 in 2020? That's going to seem like a long time ago. We're going to have to hunt and hope we have them. It's just a lot easier. They used to call them ABC reports, and they just want to make sure that a faculty member is not on either end of the extreme, that you're not giving straight A's to everybody, nor are you failing everybody, but that your grade distribution is kind of in the norm, in the mainstream. And your department will be checking that out, your chair will be checking that out along the way, especially if you know, maybe some of you teach in the department that there's lots of sections. You know, it could be that if you teach a communications course, Com 161 or something, it might be 50 of those things. And, you know, it's kind of nice to be in the pack, you know, not on either tail end of that. And it helps you compare with other faculty, kind of where do I stand in here? Is my grade distribution kind of what they would expect to get? Student evaluations are always one of those things that I get asked about a lot and how they're interpreted. And you got to be a little careful. Student satisfaction is important, but making students happy is not the be-all and end-all of why we're here. So you're going to have to trust us that we've been through this before, and I'm not looking to see that everybody has these 5 out of 5s in student satisfaction. On the other hand, if you can't get a student to say one nice thing about you or your class, there's a disconnect there. I mean, there's something going on. You're not able to connect to your students, and that's a bottleneck in our program, and that's an issue, and we're going to have that discussion, because if we're at a student-centered institution where teaching and learning is job one, which is what we purport to be, and nobody will take your class, you don't help us very much. And I tell our folks, you may win a Nobel Prize, and I'd be happy, I'd be thrilled for you, but if you can't teach biology 101, you don't help us very much here. You need to be somewhere else. And so there's just a matter of making sure that all of our needs are being met. And so I don't get too panicky if somebody comes in with one course that they get a low student satisfaction score that semester. A lot of things can happen. Could be your first time to teach it. Could be that you had a troublemaker in class that really swayed the viewpoint. Sometimes, especially in a class with a small enrollment, you know, one data point can skew the whole thing. We understand all that. But we look for trends. And if the trend is heading the wrong way for a long period of time, then we need to have a discussion about how we can improve that and how we want students to have a good experience in our classes.
Can you speak to student evaluation for online classes?
Yeah, that's a tougher challenge. Online classes, because you can't really guarantee that you get the student evaluations. And I think, again, it's a matter of trust. You have to understand that we understand that's a different animal. And so we have to look at those a little differently. I wish that for our face-to-face classes now at Murray State, there are options where you can do them electronically or you can do the evaluations in class. If I was a faculty member, I'd want them in class. I want everybody evaluating me, and when you get to be a tenured faculty member, you don't even have to do it in the spring. I wish you'd do it every semester. I want to know what every class has to say about my performance. And yeah, they'll fill in the bubble, and that'll go on to the chairman and on up the line, but there are comment sheets, and they'll tell me things on those comment sheets, and the students need to know that we look at those and we read them and we take them seriously, and we try and spot trends. And yeah, I've had some that say, you know, you need to get a different haircut, and you need to, you know, sometimes you get these oddball things, But if you start seeing the same thing, 3 and 4 times in a class or over 3 or 4 semesters, students are telling you something, and they're telling you, you need to slow down, or you need to show us more examples, or the pacing of this class really needs to be modified, or whatever. And the customer will tell you, and I don't mean it in a bad way, the customer, but that's who you're trying to serve. Online, but you'll have an opportunity, and some departments will let you have the opportunity of doing online student evaluations, and I don't think that serves you very well. I think only students with an axe to grind are really going to go to the trouble to go out there and click several times and find something to talk about. I think the ones that would like to give you a compliment probably have other things that they're doing. They're probably studying for that next test and doing the things. So I think it's worth your while to take 20 minutes, or even if it takes a period, and do a paper evaluation. That's just one guy's point of view. But
And keep in mind, also with the handwritten comments, they used to be yellow sheets. Are they still yellow?
Yeah.
We don't see those. So your chair doesn't see it, the other faculty don't see it. You're the only one who sees those.
That's correct.
And so, if you put it in your, any of those in your annual evaluation or tenure portfolio, they're taken out before they're even looked at, because those are for you alone. And so if you make sure that your students know that that's their anonymous way to communicate any of their the things they love and any of the things that they don't love, you will, like Steve said, you'll get some good information. I've made a lot of changes across the years in my classes based on the feedback that I get, and I've not made some changes based on the feedback too. So.
in the main, I think students are pretty fair, and I think students will even say, even though I didn't get the grade I wanted, it's not the professor's fault. She did her job. She was prepared. She gave me an opportunity. I think, on the whole, you'll get that. I also will tell you, I only pay attention to the summary of those first 4 questions on there. You all, the instructor's effectiveness, and the instructor's contribution, and the content of the course. That's really all I'm looking for there. And I look for a 3 out of 5. 3 is good. Right? 4 is very good, 5 is excellent. If I see a 3 and above, I don't spend any time. I'm going, things are going all right. If I see a 2.8 or a 2.9, I kind of go, yeah, I might keep an eye out for that one in the future. It doesn't. I don't even break stride though as I'm going through them. If I see something that's a 1, if you can't get to fair in a class, a 2 is fair. If a class of 35 or 40 people can't say that was a fair experience I just came out of, I'm going to start asking what happened in that classroom. And a lot of times there's really good reasons why. And we don't draw conclusions without talking to the faculty. It could be that there's a reason why it was only fair. That, yeah, we needed 40 microscopes and we only had 2. And, the students are mad about it. Okay. They should be. We'll fix that. So I get that. And the people that are evaluating you, they've been around the corner, and they've been through it themselves. So we are not an institution that brings in 10 new faculty and expects only 5 of them to be successful here. We shoot for 10 out of 10. We've invested a lot in you. You've invested a lot in us. We want you to be successful. And so we're going to try and do what we can to make sure that we are.
In documenting teaching excellence, we've mentioned graded student work, and we've mentioned student evaluations, and there are many more things. You will undoubtedly be observed in your teaching by your chair, and some departments, such as music, do have peer evaluations. We have 2 faculty members that come to your classes and watch you. We have a scoring rubric, and that person does the scoring and then writes on the back of it some comments and then has an appointment with you. And I want to encourage you to welcome these things, and if they are not done and you really would like some feedback on your teaching, ask a colleague to come in and watch you and give you some comments. All of it is done as helpfulness to build our faculty members. We hired you, we want to keep you. So this is not a negative thing at all. But every now and then you as the person, as the observer, will see something you haven't even picked up on. Did you realize you always stand in one spot and never move around? Do you realize that the kids have no idea what you're trying to get at because you went into the details before giving some, just those kinds of things. And we encourage our teachers, beyond having the 2 faculty members plus the chair that observes them every year pre-tenure, to invite other people in that they would feel comfortable having. It's a great dialogue for, what did you see that I'm missing? Or what's your opinion on things like that? So please do take it as a positive. And it's a great way to add to your teaching excellence.
Pam's right. And so, not every department does it. As chair, I used to sit in once a semester on every probationary faculty member. Chemistry sends in colleague faculty to everybody each time. Different departments will do it different ways, but you can request a colleague to come in or your chair to come in, and inevitably the faculty members, they'll beat me back to my office saying, what'd you think, what'd you see? And a lot of times it's real simple things like, do you realize your voice doesn't carry to the back of the room? You're just gonna have to project a little more. Do you realize that when you did that demonstration, you were shielding half the class? They couldn't see it because of the way your body was turned. Do you realize the pacing, oddly, sometimes the pacing is too slow. People are going to sleep on you because you're moving real slowly through this because you think, it might be a tough section of material, and they kind of got you, and they're kind of losing you because you spent too much time on it. So pacing of class is a big thing. There are lots of real easy fixes, and you don't know them because you're up there, and teaching's a performance art, and you're up there trying to do what you can to connect. And it's nice to have that person to critique you from the back row and say, here's something I noticed. And it helps a lot. And we don't presume to think that you're a spectacular teacher the first time out of the chute either. It takes a long time to develop, this example works better than that example. This exercise is more useful than that exercise. You're going to go through lots of iterations and corrections of things.
Yeah, I was just going to add, if your department isn't one that just automatically does those observations, like Pam said, ask somebody to come in and do that. And if you're not brave enough early on, videotape yourself and critique yourself, and then maybe you'll feel more comfortable to get somebody else to come in. You'll learn a lot by watching yourself on videotape or having that feedback from the experts.
So I have a question. You alluded to the fact that, especially when we have a committee, like David said, does everybody have to agree? Like, what if there's one faculty member that just doesn't like you for whatever reason? Can that person completely derail their entire tenure application?
No. So the one person, what they have to do is write a report that they each will acknowledge that they have taken part in the conversation. It's really quite rare to have a committee where you don't get the 100% agreement. I can think of one, this has been quite a few years ago, where there was one faculty member who just did not agree with any of the other recommendations, and so that faculty member had to sign that they were involved in the conversation and that they took part in doing the evaluation, but that they didn't necessarily agree with the recommendations of the committee. But I think that in all my years, I really can just think of that one case. So yeah, it does happen, but one person's not going to derail.
And I haven't been, in my years, I've not been in a situation where we did have that happen, whether it was here or previous universities that I was involved with. But as, we were talking about how we do the wordsmithing. I mean, we really do. We go over every word till everybody's comfortable. And I suppose there could be a scenario where there's that one standout that says, no, I just totally disagree. And honestly, I don't even know what we'd do there. I know that the rest of us would be inclined to, I mean, it's an honest assessment. And if we honestly believe that you're making progress, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're not going to be swayed by someone that is a loner and has their own. Yeah, I don't even know what we would do, but I don't think it's, I feel confident in saying that it's never happened since I've been at this level.
Committees take votes though, and they're not always unanimous. I mean, you know, it might be a 6-3 or something, but that's okay. They vote their conscience and they do it, and the vote is what is reflected in the recommendation. So, yeah, I mean, people will have different points of view and different opinions. But that's where, again, those annual evaluations will point those out far in advance of when the critical decision has to be made. That's what we hope.
Right, and so the faculty member who sees a problem that the other faculty members might not, as long as it's not something, you know, like, you know, I don't like the way she wears her hair or something like that, then it's going to be included in the report. It's just going to be included in a way that all of them can agree on. So they might say something like, if there's some concern that, instead of saying the committee agrees that, they might say there's some concern that. But
Concern was expressed about
Yeah.
this, or, you know, it's reflected in there,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it doesn't sink anywhere.
Yeah, and that one case I can think of, and again, this is so many years ago, I'm having a hard time pulling it up. It really was something that was just completely unreasonable. It was a grudge over something that was not related, and so that one faculty member wasn't allowed to influence things negatively. So.
Now, you go ahead, Beth.
Can you define service?
That's funny, I was just wanting to say something about service. And so I'm not going to directly answer your question, but at least it gives me an opportunity to say something about service. I always encourage new faculty members to pace themselves with service. I'm not suggesting that it's not important, because it is important. But when you come to a community that's very welcoming like Murray, Kentucky, you're going to find that you're going to get involved with different organizations, whether it's the United Way or church or this or Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts. And inevitably, they see a new person that's really talented, and they want to say, oh, your name came up. Hey, would you consider serving on the committee? Just pace yourself with that, because there's always going to be opportunities to serve, both in the university and outside the university. And I know that the chairs that I've not been the department chair, but chairs usually are very sensitive to new faculty members. They don't over-assign you. You shouldn't be on the faculty senate as a first, second, or third year person, probably. They're going to help you choose carefully different areas of service. So there's the department level, which could be on a departmental party committee. I mean, it could, you know, but there's the departmental, there's the collegiate, and of course the university service level. So my comment would be to pace yourself. It is important. It's one of the big three, but pace yourself.
Yeah, I was just going to say, again, make sure you ask, because some departments count service differently than other departments. So for example, there are some departments that say if you get paid to provide the service, it doesn't count. Others say if you're providing service, that's service and it counts. And so make sure that you ask. If you're in a department that doesn't count it if you get paid for doing it, then don't spend all your time making the millions of dollars that you would make doing that. Don't put all your energy there. Make sure that you're doing the other sorts of service that are going to count toward tenure and promotion. So that, again, is really important. But while you definitely want to pace yourself, you really do. You don't want to let your teaching or your research or scholarly activity suffer because you're doing so much service. You also, especially if you're not from this area, it can be awfully lonely. And, you know, coming in from outside to a small community and doing service is the best way to get to know people across campus and in the community. And so I know for me, now this was 100 years ago, But that's how I came to love Murray, was not necessarily just the work I was doing in the department, but once I started getting involved on campus, there were some really cool people here at Murray State. And had I not been involved in all kinds of different committees, I would have never met them. And so that service is good for your mental health in addition to your tenure health. So Steve?
Yeah, I think I agree with what's been said. Service, I don't know of anybody that's tenure prospects have been wrecked by lack of service here. You'll end up with a list as long as your arm before
Whether
it's
you
over.
want to or not.
I do think there are several levels. There's service to your profession. You'll be a member of a professional society, something like that. And so you can get involved with the professional societies or something that looks good on a regional, state, national level. There's service to the institution. Service to the institution will be serving on committees, and you'll be asked during your probationary period to represent your department or represent the college or represent the university on any number of different things. There's just lots of opportunity there. Then there's service to the community that's important. And that can be anything from, coaching a little kid's soccer to, Michelle, Southwest Elementary may call up and say, the 4th grade's studying rocks. Do you have anybody that can come out and show us some rocks? And you go do 30 minutes at the elementary school for the 4th graders and talk about rocks. And it's not that that happens every week, but a couple of times a year, we'll get a phone call, we need somebody to go talk about rocks. And so do that. And this stuff just adds up, and it goes back to write it down, keep a list, whether it's a Word document or something, just bullets of the stuff you do, and before you know it, you'll have a long list of things. There are some things that come into play. Oh, anything that involves students is highly valued here. So service to student, if you're an advisor to a student club, if you mentor a student in some way or another.
Do a presentation, to a student group.
Going to dinner with your...
Residential college activities, those kind of things. Keep those in mind. There are a lot of things that I'm sure you do every day as just part of your normal activities. You don't even think of them as fitting into that role, but they really are service kinds of activities. The other thing that you got to be careful, you got to mind what counts in your department. When she said that, I thought about advising. We have some departments that want advising to count as part of teaching. For whatever reason, I don't see it that way. I see advising as part of your service role. I think it's important, and I think it'll be an assigned thing probably for you, and you'll want to do it. I don't put, in my mind, when I'm going down looking at good, effective teaching, I don't put advising in that teaching category. I put that, in my mind, in the service category. Lots of faculty will slide it up into teaching. I get it. I understand where you could come at it that way. That's a question maybe to ask your department committee and your chair as to where would you prefer it be. And that's the other reason why in our annual evaluations I ask the chair to be there, so that you're hearing the same thing from the chair and the dean. You need the chair and dean to be on the same wavelength giving you advice, because otherwise you got too many bosses and you can't make them all happy. The department, the chair, the dean, if they're all telling you 3 different things to shoot for, boy, you're in a bad spot. And so that's where you need to politely say, you guys need to talk. I'm hearing this from the chair and I'm hearing this from the dean, and I really need to know where my priorities are. And it doesn't happen often, but it's happened a couple of times where I've realized one of us here around this table is an outlier, and we all need to get together on this. And that's where the discussion needs to head, and then we all come to an agreement. This is what the expectations are for you. This is why you were hired and what your contribution needs to be, and I make a note in your file so that it's clear. And we do have, there are some times where the roles can be a little bit differentiated, and maybe what would be a standard expectation doesn't apply to you in your situation because you were brought in specifically to accomplish this, and therefore I need to make sure I have that in mind as I'm reviewing your material.
And I want to jump in with the community service. Some departments do acknowledge any type of community service, others don't.
Right.
So for example, I do a lot of volunteer work for the Humane Society. So I'm doing a lot of community service, but as a psychology department faculty member, that did not count because that did not apply to psychology. Now, if I was a vet tech professor in the College of Agriculture or School of Agriculture, that probably would have, because what I do is, you know, take care of kitty cats. And so, you know, that's a vet tech person would. But other departments would consider that to be part of, you know, hey, you're a Murray State person, you're out there if you're wearing your Murray State hat while you're doing it, and that counts. You know, if music, I'm sure if you're singing in a chorus in the community, maybe that would count. But if I was singing in the chorus, well, they wouldn't let me, but if I was, that wouldn't have counted for psychology. So.
And what I would say is, like, I know the library is actually residential college service is paid, and you get like $10, but, you know, it's paid, so it doesn't actually really count a lot for us in terms of service. So I would definitely ask.
Yes.
I really like residential college system, and I'm very involved, but ask your team members to make sure that it counts.
Yeah, and in psychology, we decided that even if you did get paid, you're still providing service, and so we did count even paid service. So it really differs.
I would have is, are the three truly equal?
No.
No, oh, yeah, no.
60-31%?
Well, the handbook states that the first one is teaching. It makes it very clear. So at Murray State, teaching is job one. I think second place, sometimes a very close second, but still second place is research, scholarly, and creative activity. And then I think third would be your service. That'd be the way I'd.
Yeah, and unless, like Steve said a minute ago, if you were brought in for a particular reason,
Right.
so if your position is very much a service-oriented position, it would still be.
Or a research-oriented
Or
position, it could
research-oriented.
be, right.
Yeah, it'd still be teaching number one, but then it could vary with the research, scholarly activity, and service, but generally that we want to see that productivity in your area because that informs your teaching, and it also provides students opportunities to see that field, that profession in action. So that's going to be very important for most everybody.
There's
Many times.
I'm sorry, Pam.
Okay, many times in about the third year, someone will come in and say, it's been advised that I do this and this and this towards tenure, but that means I have to give up something else. And would it be better to do this or this? Please ask about that. If
Yeah.
it's not clear, many of you wear many hats in your department, and as you work towards tenure, you may say, here's my plan. I'd like to do this and this and this. I've got to cut back on this. Is that going to be a good idea? Just have that discussion, because you shouldn't keep getting more things to do without letting go of something else. You've got to be good at what you do and not burn out.
Yeah.
What if the chair changes and there's a new perspective?
Have it written down.
Yeah,
Write it down.
and that Pam is exactly right. If you've kept your reports that have all that information, and if that information's not in your reports, if you have in your discussions with your chairs, make sure that people know, that will help. But your committee's going to stay pretty much the same. And so, but that happens. The chair might change, the dean might change, but as long as you're having open communication, that's going to be key. And your chair should be representing the department rather than representing his or her own beliefs. And so the new chair should be able to take the culture and expectations of the department and work within that, and then modify it slowly rather than just dump it on you if the new chair has different expectations and ideas. But that, and the dean will protect you if God
Yeah.
forbid, the chair.
I had a faculty member have 4 different chairs and came up for tenure through 4 different chairs
Oh.
in 5 years.
Yikes.
And obviously that faculty member was just terrified.
Yeah.
What could possibly go wrong was going wrong. And the department was good to provide stability, and I I've made it a special point to say, don't worry. Anything, because I get to see what's written before it gets to me, and anything that gets written that would not take into account all the changes you've been through, I could write that away. I could explain it away and say, this is not a fair way to go on this. So it worked out fine.
As long as you're doing your part and doing what, if you're a good faculty member and you're teaching well and you're involved and you're doing your scholarly activity, if something, you get a rogue wave, your dean's going to protect you and your chair is going to protect you, but you've got to do your part too. But the likelihood of something just bizarre happening and you've been fantastic and somebody new comes in and just chops you off at the feed, it's not going to happen. And there are enough protections in the process to keep a faculty member from being hurt by something like that. Because there are all those levels, and so the university committee will look at everything, and if there's been a procedure that's missed or a signature that's missed or something like that, they'll stop it, and then goes to the provost and the president. Everybody's looking carefully to make sure things are done correctly and nobody's being hurt. Yeah.
But it makes your day-to-day life pretty tough.
Yeah, that hanging over your head.
Well, I don't know if you all can answer this, but how likely is it if you get all the way up to like the university committee that they would overrule the recommendations of deans or departments?
They would rarely overrule it unless they knew something that was a private personnel matter that none of us had access to. I don't think they would overrule in the negative.
Yeah.
I do think there have been times where they would be inclined to overrule and say, no, that person probably deserves tenure because of irregularities
Right.
that have surfaced through the process or something. I think they try and give the benefit of the doubt to the faculty member. Like I said, unless you robbed a bank and it didn't get, none of us knew about it, but they knew about it at some higher level.
And that could happen.
Yeah. Personnel decisions aren't allowed, they have to stay fairly
Right.
tight. And
Right.
even a dean may not
Right.
know, and a chair may not know that something's happened. And so we're working in that vacuum, but they may know it higher up. But I can't imagine, I've been here 28 years, and I've never seen them go negative on somebody if that person had positives all the way up the line.
Right. Yeah, and that's the key is if you're not getting in your annual evaluation, if they're not saying that you are making progress or not, if they're not saying that, ask them to put that in there so that, God forbid, something did happen at the end, you would have that. We do have an appeal policy. And so if you were denied tenure and you think that you legitimately deserve tenure, and especially if you've gotten those positive reviews all along, and if the recommendation went against you, you can appeal that. And since being in the provost office, there's been one appeal, I think that I had to be the chair of that appeal, and the faculty member was successful in the appeal. And so
I can't think of one now that I think about it, but it was an administrative. It was a dean, and the dean and the president were going like this, so.
oh yeah. I remember that
So
one.
there was a
Yeah, that's been-
situation, but it could have
That
been
was a
much
long time
simpler. I
ago.
mean, the president could have simply removed the dean,
Yeah,
but
I remember that.
that was way above my
That-
pay grade, and I tried to stay low-key on that.
Yeah.
One thing that Murray State does that not all universities do is that they tell you at each step what the decision was. So when your portfolio has
Oh,
gone
right.
through the committee, you know whether what they thought of that, especially in the promotion process, and then the chair's level, so you know all the way along. Not every university does that. Some universities, you don't know till the end whether you made it or not. It's very comforting to know, oh, good, I've made it through the committee, I've made it through the chair, I've made it through the college level committee. That's helpful.
Yeah. One other big difference we have in tenure here too is we don't often ask for things from outside the university. Some universities, you've got to get letters from comparable benchmark institutions, and external evaluators have to get involved, and that's just not been our history here. The university feels like they know your work as well as, if not better than, an external evaluator might. Now you can put in supplemental material, and you're able to put your best foot forward, but they kind of like for you to follow the instructions, and there'll be a format that's posted. I guess that brings up, do follow the instructions. Don't feel free to bring up your own format. Oh, I think I'll tab it this way. If it says chronologically, starting with this year and moving forward, and put your teaching here, your research here, and your service here, please do that. If you say, no, I decided I'm going to integrate them all together, it just flows better. It might to you, but not to anybody else. It's got to go find, we're going through a lot of those. And if we need to figure out, how many publications do you have, I ought to be able to turn to that tab real quick and be able to count, not have to read 30 pages of nice integrated prose to get to that. So it really is nice when you just follow, down to the pagination. Yeah, make it easy. It's like you're writing for a grant proposal. Make it easy for them to give you the money.
Yeah, having just been, I'm standing in
Follow
for, in psychology. I'm helping doing the evaluations this year, and there were several of the faculty members where, oh my gosh, we just had to dig and dig and dig to find, we knew that I didn't know, but the other faculty knew that the faculty members had published, and we couldn't find it in their materials. And so, yeah, make it easy.
A CV that's real clear, that clearly defines, these creative activities were adjudicated. And I think Pam alluded to it earlier. Some departments do have tier 1, tier 2. Have all that mapped out for us. Make it clear that you've met the criteria. Our college doesn't have that, but we like to know what is a peer-reviewed publication and what is a non-reviewed and what's an abstract and all these kinds of things. And there are ways that you can put it out there and make it very clear what you've accomplished. But you start trying to hide things, it kind of works against you. Or if you just try and get creative, it works against you.
Now, does every department go up for tenure and promotion at the same time, or is that
Which is why we have to go through so many of them all at once, and so having it presented in a very straightforward and easy way is good.
Tenure and promotion at Murray State are two separate actions, looked at sometimes by two separate committees.
Right.
And while most of the material, tenure leads, that's the first one that goes in, and a month later, typically would be promotion. Now this is typically, with promotion, there's all kinds of variations on prior service and lots of things. But if you're going up for tenure and promotion at the same time, keep copies of your tenure, because you'll be able to use most of that, just cut and paste or just drop it in for your promotion one as well. Promotion, you don't have to put in a needs of the university section. But please know they are two separate decisions that are made. You can get tenure without being promoted. Obviously, if you don't get tenured, it doesn't matter whether you got promoted.
Because I'm a worst case scenario person, what happens if you don't get promoted? You just go away and after a certain period of time?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and so we have some faculty who have been assistant professors for 10 years, 20 years after they made tenure. And what generally is happening for those individuals is that they are focusing on teaching and service, and they're just not doing the scholarly activity. And the department and college has decided that that's okay, that person is so valuable in the classroom that we want to keep that person around. Now, there are a lot of departments that wouldn't matter. If you didn't hit that middle part, you're out of here. Or you might have made,
Just barely clear the bar.
yeah, just like you had 3 level 1s and 1 level 2, and so they said, okay, well, we'll do tenure but not promotion. But anyway, if you did get tenure and not promotion, and then the next year even you got the publications that were expected, you could go up that next year. So, yeah.
Do they hold that next year though?
I don't think
Oh,
so.
again, that you've gone up once?
Yeah.
Not usually.
No, in fact, I think that my impression is that departments are really happy that the person went on and did that work.
They would like to
So-
see that there's a difference, that there's something new this year than
Right,
last year. They want to know what that was.
yeah. Yeah, sometimes it's just the timing. Publications in some professions can take so long that the timing just isn't right. And so having that extra year for the promotion to get the everything actually published could make a big difference.
As far as timing, nobody asked, but I don't know if any of you asked for prior service credit, but obviously if you did, that would cut your probationary period down shorter. I have had a situation where a faculty member's parent passed away. I guess he was in his 4th year here. He was named executor of the estate, and there were several nieces and nephews that were without parents that needed to be attended to, and he immediately became guardian. Just a lot of family situation hit him at a critical time, and we were able to stop his tenure clock and extend it for a year to give him a year to handle his family responsibilities and come back. And it's just a matter of you make the request, you document in writing what the needs are, you make sure that the department and the chair and the dean are supportive, and the provost office is generally right there to support it. Again, we wanted this person to be successful, and it was obvious that he wasn't going to be able to be it. He did the right thing. He put his family first, and we wanted to recognize that. I'm sure there are other reasons, other things that could come up, and there'd be unusual circumstances, but if you have such unusual circumstances, you ought to discuss them with your chair and see what considerations could be made for it.
Yeah, and that we had a faculty member also in psychology that we had to do the same thing because of family crisis. But it's a very unusual thing. This is not run of the mill, so it's not that you had a baby or something.
Doesn't happen often, and it's not taken lightly.
But it is. I think that shows the culture of Murray State that we are about our people, our student people and our faculty people and our staff people. That's who we are. And so if there is something really big that, not just an inconvenience or a life change, but something big like what Steve's talking about, of course we're not going to let you be destroyed by that. So, yeah. Again, talk to us. That's so often faculty think that they have to just always be strong and not let people see what's going on. If the chairs don't know what's going on, and the chairs really need to know what's going on, so talk to your chairs. And if you can't talk to your chair, talk to your deans. Our deans, we have a really fantastic group of deans, and a fantastic huge group of chairs. What is there, like 35 of you guys? So talk. That's so important.
Any other questions? No? Okay. Well, thank you all for coming and talking about this and answering our questions. I learned more from this than I probably did when I did this the first year. package should look like. And what I've always told people is ask somebody in your department who's gone out for tenure to look at the example.
Yes, yes, so a successful packet, and you know, we're all a bunch of nerds, we keep them, because they're, you know, we put hours and hours into it, and so I still have mine, even though I went up for tenure like 50 years ago. So ask to see what a successful portfolio looks like, and they're gonna be eager to show you, because they're proud of their work, so, yeah.
And to underscore it again, follow the guidelines.
Yes, yes,
It really is
yes,
important.
follow the guidelines.
But that's why it's so important to ask what's in your department, because
Yeah.
I've been told that every department looks different.
Yeah, that's probably why they really shouldn't, they do, but that's why we're trying to get people to follow the instructions, so they don't look quite as different. It's a 3-ring binder, and, you know, with labeled appropriately and then tabbed appropriately with the materials that the website says included. It's mainly the order that gets juggled around.
Okay.
Good luck.
Glad you're here.
That's right.
Let us know if we can help.
Yeah.